Hello. Hello, everyone. How's it going? It's your not so local half space from half human VTuber Qeidus B.Ryse. How's it going? Hey. So, saw in the title, but we're gonna be reading something. Hopefully, I can read to please or read to make you fall asleep, either out of boredom or out of immersion. Either way. I'm gonna go about this by doing the old find a top 10 of the best works from this guy. In which case, this guy being. Hey, Avner, good afternoon. What time is it over there, actually? It's also afternoon here, so maybe you can get a nap as you listen to this or after you listen to this. Whether because I read to you or not, either way, nap is nice. Hey. So yeah, 2 p.m. So there's a 2:30 or just 2 p.m. Because it's 3:30 here. Or at least that's what my space watch is saying to me. Oh yeah. I'll be using this voice because I just sang a song on repeat about 20 times and I roughed it up a bit. And I think it'll suit the reading anywho, so that'll be nice. Okay. So yeah, find a top 10 books and then good evening. Good evening はちゃうんでしょ翔さん。こんにちは。そこ、まだ4時じゃん ?4 時半。Oh. I hope you get some sleep after this afternoon. 翔さん、それ、なんだっけそこまだ4時半じゃないんですかまあわかんないですけど。そうよ。じゃあ、イーブニングはちゃうんでしょOh, yeah. So there's a difference of an hour. Oh, okay. Nice. But yeah. I guess we'll get right into it. So, it's not surprising. This model looks pretty. Thanks. Although, there's one problem. I could attack like a Pokemon like this. Hey. Of course, we'll start with Cthulhu. Guess we'll jump right in. So, Avenir and Song, I hope you enjoy the stream today. You can listen to me in the background, do whatever you want, and yeah. So first up, The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. Your head might drop if you shake a lot. Too late. Found among the papers of the late Francis Wayland Thurston of Boston. Of such great powers or beings, there may be conceivably a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested perhaps in shapes and forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity. Forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts and kinds. Algernon Blackwood. Chapter 1. The Horror in Clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity. It was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality, and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Theosophists have guessed at the awesome grandeur of the cosmic cycle, wherein our world and human race form transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survivals in terms which would freeze the blood if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not from them that there came the single glimpse of forbidden aeons which chills me when I think of it and maddens me when I dream of it. That glimpse, like all dread glimpse of truth, flashed out from an accidental piecing together of separated things. In this case, an old newspaper item and the notes of a dead professor. I hope that no one else will accomplish this piecing out, certainly. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor, too, intended to keep silent regarding the part that he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not sudden death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926 to 27, with the death of my grand-uncle, George Gamel Angle, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Let me read the comments. Have a nice day, Q, or at least the rest of the day. It's nice. Thank you. I will interact with chat because I am just reading to you. This is a two-way communication, so I'll read the chat too. Let's see. Professor Angle was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions, and he had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as it was said, after having been jostled by a nautical-looking black man. Bit of a note. I may take random pauses here because H.P. Lovecraft apparently was very racist. Incredibly racist. So, and at some point I think I read that even other people at the time who were, in our current standards, fairly racist were saying how racist Lovecraft was. Hello, Kala, you did not miss much. Hi. I'm just saying how Lovecraft was incredibly racist. Now you just encountered the first N-word. Who had come from one of the dark queer courts on the precipitous hillside, which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased's home in William Street. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded after perplexed debate that some obscure lesion of the heart induced by the brisk ascent of so steep a hill by so elderly a man was responsible for the end. At the time, I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but latterly I am inclined to wonder, and more than wonder. Where's my stress ball? Where is my stress ball? I need something to hold at the moment. We'll do with this. Okay. Continue. As my grand-uncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material which I correlated will be later published by the American Archaeological Society. Do you have English Shota voice cue? My voice is a bit rough at the moment, so I can't promise you anything. I don't think I have one. I think it's hard to pull off in English. I'll give it a try another day, or after the story. Maybe before we start the next chapter. Much of the material which I correlated will be later published by the... Yep, I read that part. It had been locked. What had been locked? Oh yeah, the box. The weird box passed down. Hi. Enjoy. You can read properly, it'd be nice. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring which the professor carried always in his pocket. Then indeed I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked barrier. For what could be the meaning of the queer clay bas relief and the disjointed jottings, rumblings, and cuttings which I found? Had my uncle, in his latter years, became credulous of the most superficial impostures, I resolved to search out of the eccentric sculpture responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. The bas relief was a rough rectangle less than an inch thick. Yes, this story is in English. It may not sound like it, but it is. It is debatable whether you could enjoy this, like, just offhandedly. The bas relief was a rough rectangle, less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern origins. Its designs, however, were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion, for although the vagaries of cubism and futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic regularity which lurks in prehistoric writing. And writing of some kind of bulk of these designs seemed certainly to be, though my memory, despite much familiarity with the papers and collections of my uncle, failed in any way to identify this particular species or even to hint at its remotest affiliations. I should also pace myself, so maybe it could go slower as well. Yo. To be fair, it's a lot of text. I did not think this through. Either way, let me grab a pillow. Yeah, it's good. Come. Okay, I got the pillow. Okay. Above these apparent, weird word. Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evidently pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings. But it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. The writing accompanying this oddity was, aside from a stack of brass cuttings in Professor Angle's most recent hand, and made no pretense to literary style, which seemed to be the main document, was headed Cthulhu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous readings of a word so unheard of. Water. Hold on. You read better than the radio in my listening test? Don't worry. I'll take that as a compliment, thank you very much. Erroneous, yes. Erroneous reading. Like a mistaken reading. What would that mean? Erroneous. English is whack. The manuscript was divided into 2 sections, the first of which was headed 1925 Dream and Dream Work of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence, R.I. And the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. LaGrasse, 121 Beanville Street, New Orleans, L.A. at 1908. This is for reading, I can't read this out. Oh, your head went to Japanese with that word. Okay. The other manuscript papers were all brief notes Some of them accounts of the queer dreams of different persons. Some of them citations from theosophical books and magazines, notably W. Scott Eliot's Atlantis and the Lost Lemuria. And the rest comments on long-surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological source books as Fraser's Golden Bough. You know what? This is kind of where's the action? It's getting there. Can't believe I'm getting bored by my own voice. Okay. それはそうね。結局日本語で会話するんですかい？まあ、いいことは悪いことでもないし。そうそう。Okay, let's just read the next paragraph. This is a long chapter, boys. Okay. Let me go through this. Okay. I'm sure it could be entertaining if I could read better, but I will skip to chapter 2. What is lore? What do you think? What do you guys think? Should I skip to chapter 2 or read everything? We are jumping to a different character, so it might be fine. Over here is like a description of... Do you have Onesan voice? Naiyo. How many pages? It's a whole... I'm reading on a website. It's long. Everything. そうか。全部読もうか。じゃあ。お姉さんボイスまだできないね。うちは。まだできないよ。This is my default no effort voice. It's a low register, lower baritone register. Eventually. I'll hit you up when I get to that point, Avner. Okay. あらあらあらあら。後でやるね。Now, I can find where I stopped. That would be amazing. Okay. The first half of the principal manuscript told a very peculiar tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Angle bearing the singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. This card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at Rhode Island School of Design and living alone at the Fleur-de-Lis building near that institution. Wilcox was a precocious youth of known genius, but great eccentricity, and had from childhood excited attention through the strange stories and odd dreams he was in the habit of relating. He called himself psychically hypersensitive. But the staid folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely queer, never mingling much with his kind. He had dropped gradually from social visibility and was now known only to a small group of aesthetes from other towns. I don't know how to read that one. Aesthetes, either way. Even the Providence Art Club, anxious to reserve its conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. そうね、いつかね。今はまだできないよ、Avenir. On the occasion of the visit, ran the professor's manuscript, the sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphs on the bas-relief. He had spoke in a dreamy, stilted manner, which suggested pose and alienated sympathy. And my uncle shewed some sharpness in replying, for the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied kinship with anything but archaeology. Young Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record it in verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast, which must have typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him. He said, "It is new, indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities. The dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden girdles Babylon." Babylon? It was then that he began the rambling tale, which suddenly played upon a sleeping memory and won the fevered interest of my uncle. There had been a slight earthquake tremor the night before, the most considerable. the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had had an unprecedented dream of great cyclopean cities of titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister with latent horror. Hieroglyphs had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below had come a voice that was not a voice. A chaotic sensation which only fancy could transmute into sound, but which he attempted to render by the almost unpronounceable jumble of letters. Cthulhu, Pthan. This verbal jumble was the key to the recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Angle. He questioned the sculptor with scientific minuteness and studied with almost frantic intensity the bas-relief on which the youth had found himself working. Chilled and clad only in his night clothes, when waking, had stolen bewilderingly over him. My throat. My uncle blamed his old age, Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphs and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed so highly out of place to his visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promises of silence, which he was offered in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread mystical or paganly religious body. When Professor Angle became convinced that the sculptor was indeed ignorant of any cult or system of cryptic lore, he besieged his visitor with demands for future reports of dreams. This bore regular fruit, for after the first interview the manuscript records daily calls of the young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imagery, whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean vista of dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice or intelligence shouting monotonously in enigmatical sense impacts, uninscribable save as gibberish. The two sounds frequently repeated are those rendered by the letters Cthulhu and Rele. On March 23rd, the manuscript continued. Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters revealed that he had been stricken with an obscure sort of fever and taken to the home of his family in Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and had manifested since then only alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle at once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close watch of the case, calling often at the Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom he learned to be in charge. The youth's febrile mind, apparently, was dwelling on strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but touched wildly on a gigantic thing miles high, which walked or lumbered about. He had no time fully to describe this object, but occasional frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Tovey, convinced the professor that it must be identical with the nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream sculpture. Reference to this object, the doctor added, was invariably a prelude to the young man's subsidence into lethargy. Lethargy? Lethargy, I don't know. His temperature, oddly enough, was not greatly above normal, but his whole condition was otherwise such as to suggest true fever rather than mental disorder. On April 2nd, at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox's malady suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed, astonished to find himself at home, and completely ignorant of what had happened in dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days. But to Professor Angle, he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly usual visions. Here, the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of the scattered notes gave me much material for thought, so much, in fact, that only the ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive of the dreams of various persons covering the same period as that in which young Wilcox had had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seems, had quickly instituted a prodigiously far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all the friends whom he could amongst nearly all the friends whom he could question without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of their dreams, the dates of any notable visions for some time past. The reception of his requests seems to have been varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without a secretary. This original correspondence was not preserved, but his notes form a thorough and really significant digest. Average people in society and businesses, New English traditional salt of the earth, gave an almost completely negative result, though scattered cases of uneasy but formless nocturnal impressions appear here and there, almost always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more affected, though 4 cases of vague description suggest fugitive glimpses of strange landscapes, and in one case there is mentioned a dread of something abnormal. It was from the artists and poets that the pertinent answers came, and I know that panic would have broken loose had they been able to compare notes. As it was, lacking their original letters, I half suspected the compiler of having asked leading questions, or having edited the correspondence in corroboration of what he had latently resolved to see. That is why I continued to feel that Wilcox, somehow cognizant of all data which my uncle had possessed, had been imposing on the veteran scientist. These responses from ascets told a disturbing tale. From February 28th to April 2nd, a large proportion of them had dreamed of very bizarre things, the intensity of the dreams being immeasurably the stronger during the period of the sculptor's delirium. Over a fourth of those who reported anything reported scenes and half sounds not unlike those Wilcox had described, and some of the dreamers confessed acute fear of the gigantic, nameless thing visibly toward the last. One case, which the note describes with emphasis, was very sad. The subject, a widely known architect with leanings towards theosophy and occultism, went violently insane on the date of young Wilcox's seizure, and expired several months later after incessant screamings to be saved from some escaped denizen of hell. Had my uncle referred to these cases by name instead of merely by number, I should have attempted some corroboration and personal investigation. but as it was, I succeeded in tracing down only a few. All of these, however, bore out the notes in full. I have often wondered if all the objects of the professor's questionings felt as puzzled as did this fraction. It is well that no explanation shall ever reach them. The press cuttings, as I have intimated, touched on cases of panic, mania, and eccentricity during the given period. Professor Angle must have employed a cutting bureau, but the number of extracts was tremendous, and the sources scattered throughout the whole globe. Here was the nocturnal. Here was a nocturnal suicide in London, where a lone sleeper had leaped from a window after a shocking cry. Here, likewise, a rambling letter to the editor of a paper in South America, where a fanatic deduces a dire future from visions he has seen. A dispatch from California describes a theosophic colony as donning white robes en masse for some glorious fulfillment which never arrives, whilst items from India speak guardedly of serious native unrest toward the end of March. Voodoo orgies multiply in Haiti, and African outposts report ominous mutterings. American officers in the Philippines find certain tribes bothersome by this time, and New York policemen are mobbed by the hysterical Levantines of the night of March 22nd to 23rd. The west of Ireland, too, full of wild rumor and legendary, and a fantastic painter named Audouin Bonneau hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in the Paris Spring Salon of 1926. And so numerous are the recorded troubles in insane asylums, and only a miracle can have stopped the medical fraternity from noting strange parallelisms and drawing mystified conclusions. A weird bunch of cuttings, all told, and I can at this date scarcely envisage the callous rationalism, no, my accent's going away, with which I set them aside. But I was then convinced that young Wilcox had known of the older matters mentioned by the professor. That was the first chapter. Oh my god. Sorry. God. Damn it, my throat. My throat is in tatters. Oh god, that was half an hour. But, I hope you're enjoying this. Like a weird challenge to me rather than for entertainment. Every other Friday. Interesting voice. Mizuyo. Missouri. I read a lot, yes. Do one of no! Kala, I just did a personal karaoke for one song about 25 times. My throat cannot. Oh wait. 逆にやりやすいかも。The older matters which had made the sculptor's dream. Right. これね。これかい。これですか？軽く。The older matters which had made the sculptor's dream in bas relief. これ？これか。じゃあ使っちゃおう。Chapter 2 The Tale of Inspector Legras. The older matters which had made the sculptor's dream in bas relief so significant to my uncle formed the subject of the second half of his long manuscript. Once before, it appears, Professor Angle had seen the hellish outlines of the nameless monstrosity, puzzled of the unknown hieroglyphs, and heard the ominous syllables which can be rendered only as Cthulhu. And all this in so stirring and horrible a connection that it is small wonder he pursued young Wilcox with queries and demands for data. Why did I say connection like that? Because it's spelled connects X-I-O-N. The early experience had come in 1908, 17 years before, when the American Archaeological Society held its annual meeting in St. Louis. Professor Engel, as befitted one of his authority and attainments, had had a prominent part in all the deliberations, and was one of the first to be approached by the several outsiders who took advantage of the convocation to offer questions for correct answering and problems for expert solution. The chief of these outsiders, in a short time, the focus of interest for the entire meeting was a commonplace-looking, middle-aged man who had traveled all the way from New Orleans for certain special information unobtainable from any local source. His name was Jean Raymond Legrasse, and he was by profession an inspector of police. With him, he bore the subject of his visit, a grotesque, repulsive, and apparently very ancient stone statuette, whose origin he was at a loss to determine. It must not be fancied that Inspector Legrasse had the least interest in archaeology. On the contrary, his wish for enlightenment was prompted by purely professional considerations. The statuette, idol, fetish, or whatever it was, had been captured some months before in the wooded swamps south of New Orleans, during a raid on a supposed voodoo meeting. And so singular and hideous the rites connected with it, that the police could not but realize that they had stumbled on a dark cult totally unknown to them, and infinitely more diabolical than even any other African voodoo circles. Of its origin, apart from the erratic and unbelievable tales extorted from the captured members, absolutely nothing was to be discovered. Hence the anxiety of the police for any antiquarian lore which might help them to place the frightful symbol and through it track down the cult to its fountainhead. Inspector Legrasse was scarcely prepared for the sensation which his offering created. One side of the thing had been enough to throw the assembled men of science into a state of tense excitement, and he lost no time in crowding around him to gaze at the diminutive figure whose utter strangeness and air of genuine abysmal antiquity hinted so patently at unopened and archaic vistas. No recognized school of sculpture had animated this terrible object, yet centuries and even 1,000 years seemed recorded in its dim and greenish surface of unplaceable stone. The figure, which was finally passed down slowly from man to man for close and careful study, was between 7 and 8 inches in height, and of exquisitely artistic workmanship. It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, with an octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, my Asian came up, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and fore feet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, was of a somewhat bloated corpulence, and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or pedestal, covered with indecipherable characters. The tips of the wing touched the back edge of the block, the seat occupied at the center, whilst the long curved claws of the doubled up, crouching hind legs gripped at the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down toward the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward, so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of huge forepaws, which clasped the croucher's elevated knees. The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly fearful because its source was so totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was unmistakable, yet not one linked did it show. What is this spelling? Yet not one link did it shew with any known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed to any other time. Totally separate and apart, its very material was a mystery, the soapy greenish black stone with its golden or iridescent flecks and striations resembled nothing familiar to geology, geology, or mineralogy. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present, despite a representation of half the world's experts learning in this field, could form the least notion of even the remotest linguistic kinship. They, like the subject and material, belonged to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it, something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life in which our world and our conceptions have no part. And yet, as the members severally shook their heads and confessed defeat at Inspector's problem, there was one man in the gathering who suspected a touch of bizarre familiarity in the monstrous shape and writing, and who presently told with some diffidence of the odd trifle he knew. This person was the late William Channing Webb, professor of anthropology in the Princeton University, an explorer of no slight note. Professor Webb had been engaged 48 years before in a tour of Greenland and Iceland in search of some runic inscriptions which he failed to unearth. And whilst high up on the grassed Greenland west on the West Greenland coast, had encountered a singular tribe or cult of degenerate Esquimaux whose religion, a curious form of devil worship, chilled him with its deliberate bloodthirstiness and repulsiveness. It was a faith of which other Esquimaux knew little, which they mentioned only with shudders, saying that it had come down from horrible ancient aeons before ever the world was made. Besides nameless rites and human sacrifices, there were certain queer hereditary rituals addressed to a supreme elder devil, or Tornasuk, and of this Professor Webb had taken a careful phonetic copy from an aged Angakok or wizard priest, expressing the sounds in Roman letters as best he knew how. But just now of prime significance was the fetish which this cult had cherished and around which they danced when the aurora leaped high over the ice cliffs. Yes. Anyway, where were we? It was, the professor stated, a very crude bas-relief of stone, comprising a hideous picture in some cryptic writing. And so far as he could tell, it was a rough parallel in all essential features of the bestial thing now lying before the mating. Yes. This dicta, received with suspense and astonishment by the assembled members, proved doubly exciting to Inspector Legras, and he began at once to ply his informant with questions. Having noted and copied an oral writing among the swamp cult worshippers his men had arrested before, he besought the professor to remember as best he might the syllables taken down amongst the diabolist Esquimaux. There then followed an exhaustive comparison of details and a moment of really odd silence, when both detective and scientist agreed on a virtual identity of the phrase common to two hellish rituals so many worlds of distance apart. What, in substance, both the Esquimaux wizards and the Louisiana swamp priests had chanted to their kindred idols was something very like this. The word divisions being guessed at from traditional breaks in phrase as chanted aloud. How do I read this? Ow. Anyway, Legras had one point in advance of Professor Webb, for several among his mongrel prisoners had repeated to him what older celebrants had told them the words meant. This text, as given, ran something like this. In his house at Relaire, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. And now, in response to a general and urgent demand, Inspector Legras related as fully as possible his experience with the swamp worshippers, telling a story to which I could see my uncle attach profound significance. It savored of the wildest dreams of mythmaker and theosophist and disclosed an astonishing degree of cosmic imagination among such half-castes and pariahs as might be least expected to possess it. On November 1st, 1907, there had come to the New Orleans police a frantic summons from the swamp and lagoon country to the south. The squatters there, mostly primitive but good-natured descendants of Lafitte's men, were in the grip stark terror from an unknown thing which had stolen upon them in the night. It was voodoo, apparently, but voodoo of a more terrible sort than they had ever known. And some of their women and children had disappeared, as a malevolent tom-tom had begun its incessant beating far within the black, haunted woods where no dweller ventured. There were insane shouts and harrowing screams, soul-chilling chants and dancing devil flames, and the frightened messenger added, the people could stand it no more. So a body of 20 police, filling 2 carriages and an automobile, had set out in the late afternoon with the shivering squatter as a guide. At the end of the passable road they alighted, and for miles splashed on in silence to the terrible cypress woods where they never came. Ugly roots and malignant hanging nooses of Spanish moss beset them, and now then a pile of dank stones or fragment of a rotting wall intensified by its hint of morbid habitation, a depression which every malformed tree and every fungus islet combined to create. At length the squatter settlement, a miserable huddle of huts, hove in sight, and hysterical dwellers ran out to cluster around the group of bobbing lanterns. The muffled beat of tom-toms was now faintly audible far, far ahead, and a curdling shriek came at infrequent intervals when the wind shifted. A reddish glare, too, seemed to filter through the pale undergrowth beyond endless avenues of forest night. Reluctant even to be left alone again, each one of the cowed squatters refused point-blank to advance another inch towards the scene of unholy worship. So Inspector Legras and his 19 colleagues plunged on unguided into black arcades of horror that none of them had ever trod before. Just keep the water open like this. Keep it on the floor. Water. Where did I stop? Here. The region now entered by the police was one of the traditionally evil repute, substantially unknown and untraversed by men. There were legends of a hidden lake unglimpsed by mortal sight, in which dwelt a huge, formless white polypus thing with luminous eyes, and squatters whispered that bat-winged devils flew out of caverns in inner earth to worship it at midnight. They said it had been there before D'Alberville, before La Salle, before the Indians, and even before the wholesome beasts and birds of the woods. It was nightmare itself, and to see it was to die. But it made men dream, and so they knew enough to keep away. The present voodoo orgy was indeed on the merest fringe of this abhorred area, but that location was bad enough. Hence perhaps the very place of the worship had terrified the squatters more than the shocking sounds and incidents. Only poetry or madness could do justice to the noises heard by Legras's men as they plowed on through the black morass toward the red glare and muffled tom-toms. There are vocal qualities peculiar to men, and vocal qualities peculiar to beasts, and it is terrible to hear the one when the source should yield the other. Animal fury and orgiastic license here whipped themselves to demonic heights by howls and squawking ecstasies that tore and reverberated through those nighted woods like pestilential tempests from the gulfs of hell. Now and then, the less organized ululation would cease, and from what seemed a well-drilled chorus of hoarse voices would rise in sing-song chant that hideous phrase of ritual. Cthulhu. I don't know how to read that. Wait, how do you read this? Genuinely. Okay, copy. Let's take a little break. How to read. How to read. I'm gonna do it justice. Okay. Yes, Avnir. I'm here having a little break and figuring out how to type this. Your singing voice. Did you open a new tab? Thank you. Okay. Read out every letter phonetically. Feng Lui. Mulunaf. Tulu. Li. Winang. Dagan. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Anyway, we'll continue. Check it on my TV. それはちょっと恥ずかしいですけどありがとう。じゃあ続きますね。Okay. We'll continue on from the earlier ones. So, where we left off was the crazy cult people, even though their voices are deader than mine, decided to chant. Hold on there. Oh yeah, Avnir. You know that song you're listening to? You know Kala? Kala mixed it for me. Anyway. Then the men, having reached a spot where the trees were thinner, came suddenly in sight of the spectacle itself. 4 of them reeled, 1 fainted, and 2 were shaken into a frantic cry, which the mad cacophony of the orgy fortunately deadened. Lagrange dashed swamp water on the face of the fainting man, and all stood trembling and nearly hypnotized with horror. Yes, Kala did the mixing. Thanks, Kala. In a natural glade of the swamp stood a grassy island, perhaps an acre's extent, clear of trees and tolerable dry. On this now leaped and twisted a more indescribable horde of human abnormality than any but a Sime or an Angora could paint. Void of clothing, this hybrid spawn were braying, bellowing, and writhing about a monstrous ring-shaped bonfire, the center of which, revealed by occasional rifts in the curtain of flame, stood a great granite monolith some 8 feet, on top of which, incongruous with its diminutiveness, rested the noxious carven statuette. From a wide circle of 10 scaffolds set up at regular intervals with the flame-girt monolith as a center hung, head downward, the oddly marred bodies of the helpless squatters who had disappeared. It was inside this circle that the ring of worshippers jumped and roared. Weird noises. Hi, Mom. I'm just reading. Hi, Mom Anir. I'm just reading. I hope you're not too bothered. I swear I'm just reading a story. Okay. Where did I leave it off? Okay. It was inside this circle that the ring of worshippers jumped and roared the general direction of the mass motion, being from left to right in endless bacchanal between the ring of bodies and the ring of fire. And it may have been only imagination, and it may have been only echoes which induced one of the men, an excitable Spaniard, to fancy he had heard antiphonal responses to the ritual. for some far and unilluminated spot deeper within the woods of ancient legendary and horror. Act natural, moms here. This is the most natural I've been. Bumbling, throat hurting. Okay. This man, Joseph D. Galvis, I later met and questioned, and he proved distractingly imaginative. He indeed went so far as to hint of the faint beatings of great wings and a glimpse of shining eyes and a mountainous white bulk beyond the remotest trees. But I suppose he had been hearing too much native superstition. It's okay, she gets used to my sipping life. That's a blessing. That's good. Actually, the horrified pause of the men was of comparatively brief duration. Duty rolls eyes and leaves. Actually, the horrified pause of the men was of comparatively brief duration. Duty came first, and although there must have been nearly 100 mongrel celebrants in the throng, the police relied on their firearms and plunged determinedly into the nauseous rout. For 5 minutes, the resultant din and chaos were beyond description. Wild blows were struck, shots were fired, and escapes were made, but in the end, Legras was able to count some 47 sullen prisoners from whom he forced to dress in hassle and fall into line between 2 rows of policemen. 5 of the worshippers lay dead, and 2 severely wounded ones were carried away on improvised stretchers by their fellow prisoners. The image on the monolith, of course, was carefully removed and carried back by Legras. Examined at the headquarters of after a trip of intense strain and weariness, the prisoners were all proved to be men of a very low and mentally aberrant type. God. Very racist things here. I should scan forward before I read anything, which I am. Most were seamen. Seamen. Seaman. Men. Get it? Okay? Okay. Anyway. Okay. More racism. Oh. Check it out. Yeah. Anyway, you know what I meant. But before many questions were asked, it became manifest that something far deeper and older than fetishism was involved, degraded and ignorant as they were. They held with surprising consistency to the central idea of their loathsome faith. They worshipped, so they said, the great old ones who lived ages before there were any men, and who came to the young world out of the sky. Those old ones were gone now, inside the earth and under the sea. But their dead bodies had told their secrets in dreams to the first men, who formed a cult which had never died. This was that cult, and the prisoners said it had always existed and always would exist, hidden in distant wastes and dark places all over the world until the time when the great priest Cthulhu, from his dark house in the mighty city of Relia, under the waters, should rise and bring the earth again beneath his sway. Someday he would call, when the stars were ready, and the secret cult will always be waiting to liberate him. Meanwhile, no more must be told. There was a secret which even torture could not extract. Mankind was not absolutely alone among the conscious things of the earth, for shapes came out of the dark to visit the faithful few. But these were not the great old ones. No man had ever seen the old one. The carven idol was great Cthulhu, but none might say whether or not the others were precisely like him. No one could read the old writing now, but things were told by the word of mouth. The chanted ritual was not the secret. That was never spoken aloud, only whispered. The chant meant only this: in his house of Relais, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. Only 2 of the prisoners were found sane enough to be hanged, and the rest were committed to various institutions. All denied a part in the ritual murders, and averred that the killing had been done by the Black Winged Ones, which had come to them from their immemorial meeting place in the Haunted Wood. But of those mysterious allies, no coherent account could ever be gained. What the police did extract came mainly from an immensely aged person named Castro, who claimed to have sailed the strange ports and talked with undying leaders of the cult in the mountains of China. Old Castro remembered bits of hideous legend that paled the speculations of theosophists and made man, and the world seemed recent and transient indeed. There had been aeons when other things ruled on the earth, and they had great cities, remains of them, he said, the deathless racism. He said the deathless had told him were still to be found as cyclopean stones on islands in the Pacific. They all died vast epochs of time before men came, but there were arts we could revive them when the stars had come round again to the right positions in the cycle of eternity. They had indeed come themselves from the stars and brought their images with them. These great old ones, Castro continued, were not composed altogether of flesh and blood. They had shape, but did not this star-fashioned image prove it? But that shape was not made of matter. When the stars were right, they could plunge from world to world through the sky. But when the stars were wrong, they could not live. But although they no longer lived, they would never really die. They all lay in stone houses in the great city of Relais, preserved by the spells of mighty Cthulhu for a glorious resurrection when the stars and earth might once more be ready for them. But at that time, some force from outside must serve to liberate their bodies. The spells that preserved them intact likewise prevented them from making an initial move. They could only lie awake in the dark and think whilst uncounted millions of years, how did that get there, rolled by. They knew all that was occurring in the universe, but their mode of speech was transmitted thought. Even now, they talked in their tombs. When after infinities of chaos, the first men came, the great old ones spoke to the sensitive among them by molding their dreams, for only thus could their language reach the fleshly minds of mammals. The fleshly minds of mammals. Squishy brain. Brain squishy. Then, whispered Castro, those first men formed a cult around small idols, which the great ones shewed them. Yes, I just read for an hour. This is the stream. How are you finding the stream, Avenir? It's practice. And also, I do like Lovecraftian stuff. And I did have a period where I liked reading. The period is not now. We must relearn what we like. Anyway, let's go back to squishy mammal brains. Then, whispered Castro, those first men formed a cult around small idols. Wait a second, did we read this? No, we haven't. Which the great ones shewed them. Idols bought in dim areas from dark stars. That cult would never die till the stars came right again. The secret priest would take great Cthulhu from his tomb to revive his subjects and resume his rule of the earth. Me too, buddy, me too. The time would be easy to know, for then mankind would have become as the great old ones, free and wild and beyond good and evil, with laws and morals thrown aside, and all men shouting and killing, reveling in joy. Then the liberated old ones would teach them new ways to shout and kill and revel and enjoy themselves, and all the earth would flame with a holocaust of ecstasy and freedom. Meanwhile, the cult, by appropriate rites, must keep alive the memory of those ancient ways and shadow forth the prophecy of their return. In the elder time, chosen men had talked with the entombed old ones in dreams, but then something had happened. The great stone city, Valir, with its monoliths and sepulchres, had sunk beneath the waves, and the deep waters of the one primal mystery through which not even thought can pass, had caught our spectral intercourse. But memory never died, and high priests said that the city would rise again when the stars were right. Then came out of the earth the black spirits of earth, moldy and shadowy, and full of dim rumors picked up in caverns beneath forgotten sea bottoms. But of them what is that? Oh god, that. But of them old Castro dared not speak much. He cut himself off hurriedly, and no amount of persuasion or subtlety could elicit more in this direction. The size of the old ones, too, he curiously declined to mention. Of the cult, he said that he thought the center lay amid the pathless deserts of Arabia, or Aram, the city of pillars, dreams hidden and untouched. It was not allied to the European witch cult, and it was virtually unknown beyond its members. No book had ever really hinted of it, though the Deathless said there were double meanings in the Necronomicon, and the Mad Abdul al-Hazred, which the initiated might read as they chose, especially the much discussed couplet. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. We are at half point in this webpage. We are at half point in this webpage. Oh. Ikayasuga. Yeah. Yeah, let's just chill out for a bit. Oh my god. Hey guys, I'm gonna talk like a normal human being. Chat. Come chat with me. How you going? How's it going? How you doing? No, the thing with the reading, if you read with your brain without saying it out loud, it's effortless. You can just scan through the words like a little scanner, you know? It's all fun and games. When you read, it's a commitment. You have to choose your words, the accents, all the nonsense you have to communicate. Yes, hi. Hi, Avnir. Hello, how are you? I'm gonna take a, like, I don't know, 5-minute break. My brain. Yes. I should have chosen a shorter story, but no. I decided Cthulhu is cool. I'm doing fine, how are you? Ah, that could be better, but not that bad. Yeah, I'm doing alright. Had pasta for lunch. Pasta and chicken. Yeah. It was good. Now I'm vibing here in my seat. The air conditioner is feeling a bit warm because the outside world is really warm. Wow, it's so bright outside. Oh god. I want to try reading in gentle voice, like so gentle for children. Yeah. I've been trying to practice. a gentle voice as well. Maybe like for singing as well. Because there's a default that I revert to. Two defaults. One is like barely singing, just reading things out with a slight melody and tone. And the other is not really bassy, but yes. Either way, I want to add to the repertoire. Yes, you should eat lunch, Avenir. I don't know, grab some snacks if you have some. Maybe I should do that. No, we ate. Yeah, Avenir, eat something. Go, 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 go. Until you have communicated with us that you have received nutrition or got nutrition you need. Well, I'm not continuing. Your hunger bar is red. Ah. Tweet. Reading hard. Reading hard. PN. Oh god. Eat something. Or drink something with nutrition in it. Please. Please. Nutrition. Get something. What does not have color anymore? Your hunger bar? Oh, is hunger no longer a stat that concerns you? Invincible. Muteki. Not affected by hunger, Avnir trudges on. And trudges on, and trudges on towards their day. Maybe I should get a snack. Yeah. Yeah, eat something. At least once a day. Like a good meal once a day. Let's see. Has it been 5 minutes? I don't know. I was trying to fall asleep. This is a aside. This is a random story, but I was trying to fall asleep to some ASMR yesterday because I was so tired. But then I woke up halfway because my left ear, the inside, was hurting so much in pain. It was stinging. Like, what is happening? These are normal tingles. Why do you deny? I had to yank my earphones off, half asleep. Okay. Oh wait, it's not about my eating. I want to ask some singing. Wait, what? What does that mean? What does that mean? While you communicate that, I will grab some snacks. Yes. Ear pain. Ear ringing, I've had it most of my life, so that's whatever. It's just ear pain. It's like I was getting stabbed in the eardrum. Can you sing now for break time? Sure. After I get a snack. Wait. Okay, I'll be right back. 少々お待ちくださいます。 I'm feeling a bit peckish. All of a sudden, not really. I thought I had a substantial lunch, but I guess I lied to myself. I'm gonna rip the side. The most ungracious way to open a pack of chips. Aye. Okay. Right ear or left ear? Important question. I would answer right ear. Waiting. Your answer will determine your faith and my next course of action. Right ear or left ear? Left ear. Very well. Oh, there. We're taking a little break from our reading. So, I hope you enjoyed this little bit of stupid ASMR. I'm just gonna... Might as well do the other ear. Vincent. Van Gogh. That's why? Oh, that's a beautiful chip. And Mickey for the right ear. Anyway, yeah. Oh, chips! I don't remember either. I think? I don't know. So the question was right ear or left ear, right? Because my right ear is more receptive to ASMR stuff. Yeah. That was the thing. Anywho. Water. Alright. What do you want me to sing, Avner? Before we continue onto our reading, which is very entertaining, but also killing me inside, what do you want to hear me sing? I will sing one verse and one chorus as a little hype me up before I continue this reading, of which there is still half left. Do you know any lullaby? Unfortunately, I do not. I think I should learn some, but I really don't. So let's Google some that I might remember. Lullabies. 20 baby lullaby songs to help your little one fall asleep. Or, oh, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is a lullaby. Okay. Oh, Rockabye Baby. Good night. Oh, John Lennon? Oh, I don't remember this one. My Last Day. Yourness. I don't believe so. My Last Day. Yourness. Lyrics. 聞いたことないかも、これ。多分、そう。聞いたことない。それはごめんですわ。The Cradle Song. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Amazing Grace. What? This is a lullaby? Damn. Oh. Okay, let's find a song I would consider lullaby-ish. Okay. I don't know. Kala, what's a good song? Deja vu uki uki daisuki. なんじゃそりゃ。Deja vu uki uki. Oh. Oh. Those are two sentences. Right. I haven't been watching a lot of Uki recently. Or Niji Sanji class for the matter. I've been watching more Hollow and Vispo. Did I watch recently? I think I did watch recently. Sing whatever you're confident with. Since the mention was lullaby. God, my repertoire is always a mishmash. I don't remember anything. Oh yeah, Fulgur's song. Wait, Fulgur has an original? I don't even know. I didn't even know. Holy shit! I'll check it out later. God damn! Fulgur got an original song. いいじゃん。Legatus. Oh, okay. Alright. Let's sing something depressing then. It is in line with the story at the moment. What is it? Ah. Forcefully. It's not the best deep voice thing. We fuck around here with the reverb. The reverb. Where is it? I don't know. Hold on, I gotta look for the lyrics and the name of the song as well. Okay. It's not you. Ah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Very practice a bit. To the moon? To the moon. I don't think I have. To the moon. Song. 聞いたことないかも. Who's the artist? You'll have to inform me about that. But I do have a song in mind, so we'll go with that. This was a cheeky amount of reverb. And then we'll continue right off. Swear. Oh, hooligan. Maybe at some point. Anyway, muting for a bit. Okay, I get the vibe. This is a short excerpt from Supercell's number 525-300-887039. That is the name of the song, but is usually abbreviated to number 525 by Supercell in the album Ziga Experiencia. 沈んでく海面へくるんだ目した魚が笑う光もその場所へ落ちてく So high 気がついたかいや はじめましてよ。ここじゃみな誰もがそうせ番号制浮き上がることさえでき死ぬまでここでさまよう光を失い僕は這いずってな stranger 海の上の世界はどうなんだそこには目のような世界があるぞあるぞThat is the end of the singing session. Come to the singing stream next time, which I don't know what I'm doing next. Let's continue on. Fuck, I don't know. We'll go do a quarter of this fucking page and we'll be done. To the extra viewer, I swear we are reading. This is a break time. I am pointing my fingers. I swear to you, this is a reading session. I swear. This is a little break for me. And also we're eating chips. Hi. Anyway. That was good. Thank you. Pachi pachi mo arigato, arigato. Singing stream? No, it's not. It's a reading stream. Fuck this story. Let's pick another one. I need a short one. A short story. Short. ASMR ストリーム全部やん。もう全部やん。全部やってるじゃん。この配信の中で。Oh. I don't know what a fat victory. Short stories. Oh god, the Call of Cthulhu is a short story. Alright. Dagon. The one you played recently, Kala. Let me check how short it is. Shorter. Thank god. Oneshota fanfic is short story. You were not incorrect. Maybe another time. 今やんないよ. Yeah, it's more reasonable. Yeah, okay. What is this? Anyway, Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. I'm gonna get right into it. I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable. I can bear the torture no longer and shall cast myself from this garret window to the squalid street below. Do not shrink from my slavery to morphine, yet I am a weakling, or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due as naval prisoners. So liberal indeed was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude I knew, nothing, and no island or coast island was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastnesses of unbroken blue. The change happened while I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous. When at last I awaked, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with carcasses of dying, decaying fish, not dying, decaying, and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from the sky, which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet. As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions which for innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean. Strain my ears as I might, nor were there any sea fowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness, and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in the short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished seas and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with the graver things to mind, so slight and evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert. That night I encamped, and on the following day I still traveled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it. By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from the distance, an intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the warning, the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain. I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon, I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I should just use an accent. It's more effortless. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me, but I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mountain and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illuminate? Word. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Though my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a decent whilst after a drop of a few 100 feet, not decent, descent. The declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks. I lost where I was reading. I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon. That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely. The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that heaved in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions, and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me, and unlike anything I had ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I'd observed on an ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound. Let me scroll down. Scrolling down. Okay. Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Dore. I think that these things were supposed to depict men. At least, a certain sort of men. Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms, I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond imagination of a Poe or a Bulwa, they were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribes. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestors of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing, whilst the moon cast queer reflections on a silent channel before me. Then suddenly I saw it, with only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface. A thing slid into view above the dark waters, vast, polyphemus-like, and loathsome. It darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm some time after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard peals of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god, but soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries. It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men. Often I ask myself if couldn't null all what God again this old English. Often I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of favor, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on a slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likeness on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down in their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind, of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean floor shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. Goddamn. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door as some immense, slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand, the window, the window! Very, very dramatized, the ending. That's the end. Okay, Kala, how was it? I could read this. This is very readable. Nice. I mean, yeah, nice. Call of Cthulhu. Okay, let's put Cthulhu aside. Let's make another short story. What's a shorter story? What's the Outsider? I don't know. It's short. I'll read it. The Outsider. Oh my god. Lovecraft did poetry. Oh my god. You need to read poetry. Guys. Lovecraft has poetry. Yeah, I'll keep this voice. The voice is better. Best poems. Was he as good as writing poems as writing weird stories? Maybe. Oh no. You know what? Hold on. I'll share the screen if possible. 少々お待ちくださいます。Where am I? Where am I? Who am I? Plus, I want to capture a window. For now. Yep, that's the one. That's the one. That's the one. Okay. Where am I? Okay. Let's just reduce my size a little bit. Like so. Nope. Not that one. Me. Reduce my size. How about reading Shakespeare poem? After this one. Transform. And then fit screen. And then I get this. I reduce myself in size. For the convenience of everyone, including myself. Okay. Lovecraft did poems. I think it was for a job. I think maybe that was how he earned money. So yeah. Let's have a little look and see. Guys, what's a good title? What's a good title out of all of these? The Nightmare Lake. What? Christmas greetings. Christmas. The cats. The cats. He's got the poem. The cats. Oh my god. No context. I'm just gonna read. The Cats. A poem by H.P. Lovecraft. Babbles of blocks to the high heavens of towering. Flames of futility swirling below. Poisonous fungi in brick and stone flowering. Lanterns that shudder and death lights that glow. Black monstrous bridges across oily rivers. Cobwebs of cable by nameless things spun. Catacombs of deeps whose dank chaos delivers. Streams of live footer. Well, I don't know what that means. That rots in the sun. Where's the cat? Color and splendor, disease and decaying, shrieking and ringing, and scrambling insane. Rabbles exotic to a stranger gods praying, jumbles of odor that stifle the brain. Legions of cats from the alleys nocturnal, howling and lean in the glare of the moon, screaming the future with mouthings infernal, yelling the burden of Pluto's red rune. Tall towers and pyramids ivied and crumbling, vast as swoop low in the weed-cumbered streets. Bleak broken bridges o'er rivers whose rumbling joins with no voice as the thick tide retreats. There's not enough cats in this. Belfries that blackly against the moon totter. Caverns whose mouths are by mosses. What the heck? How do you read that? And living to answer the wind and the water, only the lean cats that howl in the waste. What the heck was that? I don't know. I don't understand poems. Okay. I gave him a try. I gave him a try. Shakespeare. To be fair, I don't understand things. I don't understand a lot of things. Whoa. 357 poems. Alright, after I read a poem by Shakespeare, we'll be good. Okay, since you recommended me something, Avenir, do you have like a suggestion to read? What is a poem? Okay, I'll bring out the accent again. Try my best. The last bit. Goddamn, it's been 2 hours. My throat is in tatters. Oh, there's one I really like. Okay. I shall await and I shall read it. I shall be cultured today. Okay, okay. 待ってますよ。はーい。Like, I'm like a Pokemon. I can attack with the little spike on my head. Yo. Yo. Like the Z Saber from Mega Man. There's you like a beam sword. Huh. Okay. How I compare thee to a summer's day. Okay. I'm gonna bring out my poshest accent. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? By William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a day. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. Every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance on nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou art. I don't know how to read this. I didn't know I had to read this. I'll continue. Nor shall death break thou wondrous in his shade, when in eternal lines time thou grows. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. How do you read this? どう読めるのこれ。アブネーさん。どうやって読めるのこれ。こちらの単語をどう読めますか？うん。I don't know. まあいいか。終わりにしたいと思います。来てくれてありがとうね、みんな。I mean, it is old English. It's just a different time. It's a weird, weird thing. Okay, let's just move this back to the screen. Hi. Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for coming to Amateur Hour. The whole... Ooh. お疲れ様でした。はいはい、お疲れお疲れ。来てくれてありがとうね、みんな。Veneer さん、Kala Kun, that one and other person. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you. Love you. Yeah. おつきゅうじゃんな。バイバイバイバイバイバイ。Where's the transition screen? It's over here. よし。またね。来てくれてるとね。バイバイ。バイバイバイバイ。じゃあね。